Welcome to the Explainer. So, let me ask you a quick question right off the bat. How many times have you already checked the smartphone in your pocket today? Honestly, probably too many to count, right? It's been the literal center of our digital lives for well over a decade. But as we'll see today, according to a massive convergence of recent industry data, major structural supply chain shifts, and absolutely wild wearable advancements, that rectangular screen you're so attached to, it's living on borrowed time. Today, we're diving into a complete paradigm shift. We're talking about the transition to ambient computing and smart glasses, a shift that experts project will push the smartphone into total obsolescence by 2035.
Let's quickly run through our agenda for this explainer. First, we'll look at the current smartphone market crisis. Then, we'll dive into the invisible interface revolution, compare the heavy-hitting wearable contenders, break down the physical hurdles standing in the way, neutrally examine the neural privacy threat, and wrap it all up with the actual 2035 obsolescence roadmap. Let's get right to it.
Section 1, the smartphone market crisis. Okay, so to understand where we're going, we have to look at where we are. And right now, the smartphone market is hitting a massive wall. According to recent data from IDC and Omdia, 2026 actually saw a staggering 13.9% year-on-year decline in global smartphone shipments. That brings total units down to about 1.09 billion. To put that into perspective, this marks the steepest annual contraction in the entire history of the smartphone. The entry-level market, specifically that sub-$100 segment that used to push over 170 million devices into the hands of consumers, is literally becoming economically unviable to even produce anymore. And the reason behind this crash? Well, the global supply chain is effectively bursting at the seams. We recently saw average prices for essential components like DRAM and NAND flash memory spike by more than 80% in just a single quarter. Crazy, right? This essentially forced the global average selling price of a smartphone up to a record $550. That is a massive 21% jump. When the absolute basic building blocks of a device become this incredibly expensive, the industry doesn't just tweak the design, it is forced to look for an entirely new paradigm.
Which brings us to Section 2, the invisible interface revolution. So the foundational concept we need to understand here is ambient computing. Simply put, this is technology that just operates quietly in the background. It responds to your context, your environment, and your immediate needs without you ever having to pull a heavy device out of your pocket, unlock a screen, and tap on a specific app. It is a fundamental shift away from giving explicit commands toward a system that just anticipates what you need before you even ask. And this shift creates what we call the invisible interface. Imagine for a second a whole digital system with absolutely no screens, no physical buttons, and no endless menus to scroll through. By combining highly advanced natural language processing with context-aware smart sensors, things like outward-facing cameras and motion detectors, the technology actually understands your physical situation. It knows exactly where you are, what time of day it is, and literally what you are looking at right in front of you. It completely eliminates those old traditional barriers between you and getting your digital tasks done.
All right, let's move to Section 3, comparing the wearable contenders, because everyone wants a piece of this.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the massive divergence in hardware strategies right now. We've seen some early, maybe a little clunky transitional devices from startups like Humane and Rabbit, trying to act as these little AI pins or pocket companions. But make no mistake, the real multi-billion-dollar race is for your visual field. You've got Apple targeting a 2027 launch with their N50 glasses, which are going the route of screenless audio wearables. Then you have Meta's Orion prototype, which is going all in on full micro-LED augmented reality. Though, to be fair, it currently suffers from a pretty rough 2 to 3 hour battery life. Meanwhile, Google, teaming up with Samsung and Xreal for Project Aura, is aiming for late 2026. They're running a brand new Android XR operating system and creatively solving the heavy computing problem by offloading all that processing power to a tethered, pocket-sized compute puck.
Let's zoom in and contrast Apple and Meta specifically, because their approaches are like night and day. Apple is reportedly skipping the whole bulky, sci-fi-looking phase entirely. Their N50 glasses rely heavily on visual intelligence using dual cameras and a custom N401 chip. They are hyper-focused on a sleek, fashion-forward screenless experience that just seamlessly pairs with the iPhone you already have in your pocket. Meta, on the flip side, is pushing the absolute boundaries of physics. They're using holographic projection with silicon carbide waveguides, and get this, they are even integrating an EMG neural band to physically track your subtle eye and wrist movements. It's wildly ambitious. But, we cannot ignore the massive wild card in the room. OpenAI. They are aggressively building out a physical hardware ecosystem to just bypass the traditional smartphone entirely. Following a staggering $6.5 billion acquisition of the startup IO, they partnered up with legendary designer Jony Ive's firm Lovefrom. With ex-Apple veteran Tank Tan now leading their hardware division, they're preparing to drop a developer pad called the Codex Micro and a late 2026 smart speaker. Think of it like a HomePod 2.0, but equipped with cameras for Face ID shopping. Because, well, I'm sure nothing could possibly go wrong with the speaker buying things just by looking at your face, right? And yes, they absolutely have their own smart glasses in active development too. They're not messing around.
Section 4. Technological and physical hurdles, because it's not all smooth sailing just yet.
To be clear, the physical constraints keeping these devices off our faces right now are incredibly severe. First up, standard lithium batteries are a huge bottleneck. They simply do not hold enough energy for all-day AR without making the glasses uncomfortably heavy on your nose. Second is thermal dissipation. You obviously can't stick a spinning cooling fan in a pair of sleek glasses, and placing a high-performance, heat-generating computer processor directly against human skin, yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. Then you have the tricky limitations of harvesting enough ambient light for power while indoors, not to mention the sheer mechanical stress. Think about it. Twisting, dropping, sweating, these face-worn electronics have to endure a massive amount of physical abuse every single day. So the absolutely crucial point here is that a massive generational leap in power storage is required to make this work. And the sources point directly to 2026 solid-state batteries as the exact catalyst needed to kick this off. If you compare current lithium-ion batteries, which might give you maybe 3 to 5 hours of active AR use, and then take 90 minutes to charge, these new solid-state batteries offer roughly 3 times the energy density. We are talking about 12 to 15 hours of active continuous use in the exact same lightweight form factor. Plus, they offer a 15-minute rapid charge with virtually no risk of thermal fires. This, right here, this is the breakthrough that makes all-day wearable reality actually possible for the mainstream.
Section 5. The neural privacy threat. This is a realm where the law is currently struggling incredibly hard just to keep up with the tech, just to report neutrally on what's happening legally. In April 2025, several U.S. senators introduced the MIND Act to address this very issue. They noted, and I quote, "Unlike other personal data, neural data captured directly from the human brain can reveal mental health conditions, emotional states, and cognitive patterns, even when anonymized." This legislation is actively seeking to allocate funds to the FTC to explore whether our current legal frameworks are actually equipped to handle brain-computer interfaces like Neuralink, or even those non-invasive wearable EEG headbands that are hitting the market.
And realistically, we are already seeing deep, complicated regulatory fragmentation happening on a state-by-state level. For example, Colorado recently defined neural data incredibly broadly, protecting information generated by both the central and peripheral nervous systems. On the other hand, California's CCPA currently excludes data inferred from non-neural information. So what does that actually mean? Well, under California law right now, a wearable that uses your heart rate to infer your emotional stress isn't currently classified as capturing sensitive personal information in the same way a direct brainwave interface would be. This whole patchwork of different definitions is leaving some massive gray areas when it comes to everyday consumer privacy. Which leads us to our final part today, Section 6, the 2035 Obsolescence Roadmap. Let's see how this all plays out. The sources lay out a very definitive, step-by-step, 3-phase timeline for the death of the smart gun. In Phase 1, which is right now, between 2025 and 2028, we'll see about 20% of our daily tasks, like turn-by-turn navigation, live translation, and quick glanceable notifications, shift over to companion smart glasses that still need a smartphone sitting in your pocket to work. Phase 2, from 2029 to 2032, is the real tipping point. This is where 50% of tasks shift to standalone spatial systems featuring integrated cellular connections and local edge AI processing. No phone required at all. Finally, Phase 3, wrapping up around 2035, sees a full 40% mainstream adoption of complete spatial AR eyewear. At this specific point, the traditional handheld smartphone effectively becomes an obsolete, transitional relic of the past, just a stepping stone.
To give you a real sense of what your everyday life will actually feel like a decade from now, I want you to consider this 2035 forecast from Elon University. They predict an experience where an invisible AI assistant essentially sits on your shoulder. It literally sees what you see in real time, and it advises you based on its massive, networked collective experience.
It doesn't boss you around or just wait for direct commands. It anticipates your needs before you do, offering optimized choices directly into your field of vision and hearing.
Which really leaves us with the ultimate question as we hurdle toward this post-smartphone future. The technology is rapidly solving the battery and thermal hurdles as we speak. The biggest tech giants in the world are pouring billions of dollars into owning your visual field, and privacy laws are scrambling to figure out how to protect your literal thoughts. The era of the smartphone is absolutely ending, and ambient computing is stepping up to take its place. The only real question left for us is, are you ready for reality itself to become a digital overlay? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. It's a wild topic, and I will catch you on the next one.